Watch this video until the end to see how a single decision unravels the truth between two lifelong friends and leads them to a love neither dared to name. Chapter 1. The Thread That Never Snapped. I have always believed that friendship is a kind of private weather, the temperature you carry through your days no matter the season. Lena and Theo were that for each other. Steady climate, predictable skies, even when the world around them kept reforming its shores. I remember them both as if I were framing a picture. Lena, with a pencil behind her ear and flower on her sleeve. A calendar so dense it resembled a crossword. Theo, whose calendar was a field of white that he filled with last-minute flights, a streak of bike grease, and that unbothered smile he wore like a signature. They met a decade ago at a midnight trivia night where the prize was a bowling trophy and a gift card no one ever redeemed. Something sparked, fizzled, and settled. They chose friendship with an ease that implied they were saving the heavier fire for later. They were good that way, knowing when to leave a door open without stepping through. I am the one who watched them. I'm Cass, Lena's neighbor in Los Angeles, the unofficial aunt to her son, and the person who stored secrets the way others store spices, labeled and within reach. From across our shared courtyard, I saw Theo visit once a year, twice on luckier years, arriving with new plants and old stories, tossing his body onto Lena's sofa and calling her kid, Captain. He spent his Brooklyn days designing campaigns for people who didn't know how to tell stories about themselves. She spent her LA nights balancing a ledger, a homework sheet, and a casserole that always tasted like home. And through it all, their thread held steady, a daily exchange of voice notes and check-ins, a ritual as reliable as sunrise. They dated other people. They pretended not to listen too closely when someone said a new name. They kept the door open.
Chapter 2. The Switch Effect.
The year everything tilted began with a leak. A hairline crack in Lena's finances, the kind that grows if you refuse to look. Her bakery certification class in New York, one she'd been postponing for years, opened a last-minute slot. She needed the credential to convince a cautious lender. She needed the lender to open her own place. She also needed someone to watch Max, her book-devouring, hockey-skating 11-year-old, for 2 weeks. The sitter fell through, her ex's schedule vanished in a puff of excuses, and the calendar she worshipped turned into an accusing grid. Theo called from Brooklyn, heard the exhaustion in her silence, and said the thing that would change everything. I'll come to LA.
Take my place. Stay at my place.
The plants could use someone who believes in routine. It was absurd and perfect. They didn't even name it a swap. They called it a favor, then a project, then a social experiment, as if humor could sanitize the intimacy of keys changing hands. I watched Lena hand Theo a folder of schedules. Pickups, drop-offs, emergency contacts, favorite snacks, a list of how not to ruin the cast iron pan. Theo showed her how to water the fern that judged you, and where the coffee beans slept. There was an unceremonious hug at the curb and a kiss that landed half on the cheek, half on air. Max rolled his eyes and told Theo that if he ruined the chilly night tradition, there would be consequences. Lena flew east into weather she hadn't felt in years. Theo took the west like a challenge and an invitation. In the first photos they sent me, Lena was a coat against a slate Manhattan sky, while Theo, in sunglasses, stood before a wall of bougainvillea so flamboyant even the sun blushed. Chapter 3. The Things We Hide in Our Homes. The romance of a house swap is not in the sheets or the view but in what the shelves confess when you aren't performing for your own life. In Brooklyn, Lena moved carefully, reverent with another person's belongings. She found Theo's kitchen drawer of mismatched chopsticks and foreign transit cards, a museum of his restlessness. She found a portfolio wedged behind art books, full of designs bolder and stranger than anything he showed clients. This was work with teeth and tenderness. Notes in the margins. Not for them. For me. In Los Angeles, Theo stood before Lena's calendar and whistled. He did not laugh. He understood the scaffolding that held that family upright. He discovered the cookbook drafts tucked behind a thick binder of soccer schedules. He opened a notebook filled with recipes named after moods, end-of-week lemon bars, hopeful mornings brioche, and one titled Don't Say It Yet chocolate cake. He smiled, then closed the book like a secret he wanted to deserve.
I saw Theo learning the roots my city demands.
He drove Max to hockey at dawn, burned one pan of cinnamon rolls and nailed the next, grew confident with the car's stubborn turn signal. At the rink, a coach named Darren, with forearms that looked carved, offered tips, and Theo returned the favor by designing a flyer for the team fundraiser. Back in Brooklyn, Lena learned the train's rhythms, met a bookbinder in a narrow shop who stitched together pages the way some people mend hearts, and taught Lena how to wait, to press, to trust glue and time. At night, their calls lengthened. I could tell by the messages Lena left me at odd hours, voice hushed, like confessing to the dark. She teased Theo about the kitchen smoke alarm that now considered him a friend. He teased her about the way New York had made her walk faster, like the city had dared her to keep up. What they did not say hummed under everything. Chapter 4. The City as a Mirror. Cities change you by tricking you into thinking you're the one deciding. Brooklyn coaxed Lena into a lecture on culinary storytelling where she raised her hand and, for the first time I can recall, spoke of her dreams without apologizing. Afterward, a woman named Nora slipped her a card and said, "When you're ready to pitch the book, call me." That night, Lena lay on Theo's rug and read his margins by lamplight until the words smeared in her tears. Not for them. For me. It felt like an invitation written years before she knew how to accept it. In LA, Theo let himself be drafted into the quiet mechanics of home. He learned Max's tells, the way he shrugged when a classmate's cruelty stung, how he over-apologized for taking up space. Theo taught him to tape a hockey stick and to be precise with the butter on toast because small care adds up. He fixed the loose cabinet hinge without a YouTube tutorial. He found, to his surprise, the pleasure in repeating a day with minor variations. A new joke, a better sauce, the same boy coming home taller in ways that had nothing to do with height. There was a neighbor, a violinist with a laugh like a cracked bell, who invited Theo to a porch concert. He went, clapped, and walked home alone under a sky so clear it emptied you out. He left a note on the fridge for Max. We're more ourselves when someone counts on us. Lena, emboldened, let a colleague set her up on what they called a rehearsal date, the kind where you try on your old self to see if it still zips. He was kind. He asked good questions. She smiled at him and thought about Theo's apartment plants leaning toward light. On her way home, she bought a tiny spiral whisk for Theo's kitchen and tucked it into his drawer of oddities as if hiding a breadcrumb for when he needed to find his way back to courage.
Chapter 5. De Mist, de Near Confesión.
Misunderstandings are impatient creatures. One evening, Theo FaceTimed from my kitchen table, steam curling from a pot of chili he swore tasted like a hug. Behind him, Darren dropped off a forgotten hoodie and stayed to talk line changes. On Lena's screen in Brooklyn, the frame widened to include the handsome coach and my laugh. We must have looked like a party flattening itself into pixels. Later that night, a photo appeared on social media. Lena at a Brooklyn bar with her rehearsal date and Nora, her fairy godmother in glasses. The caption was harmless. The timing was not. They heard each other's imagined lives loudest in those hours. Theo hung up too quickly. Lena did not call back the next day. They wrote messages that began with congratulations and ended with periods too heavy for their size. When Theo finally spoke, his voice dropped the familiar jokes. He told Lena about the portfolio she would have found, how he kept his best ideas away from people who wanted to make them smaller. She admitted the binder in her bag, the one with her bakery name printed on a cover that made her stomach flutter. They almost said it then. They almost said, "I want this with you." Instead, Theo told her he'd been offered a job that would have him flying even more, building campaigns in cities he'd never learned by heart. He said it like a test he expected to fail. Lena told him the lender wanted proof she could build a brand. Press, metrics, a following she had not cultivated because she'd been busy cultivating a child. Their silences overlapped across the continental divide. I wanted to shake them both, or hug them so hard the truth came out of their sleeves. I settled for making Max and Theo a second batch of chili. I told Lena, when someone keeps a light on for years, it's because they plan to come home. Chapter 6. Weather, flights, and the door we choose. Storms rolled over the country the day their 2 weeks were supposed to end, delaying flights and making strangers of clocks. Theo packed Lena's house with the efficiency of someone afraid to linger. He wrote a letter and tucked it into the cookbook notebook under "Don't Say It Yet" chocolate cake. The letter told the truth the way he'd tell a story for a client. Simple, memorable, honest, the kind you remember in the dark. I want to choose the same place as you, it said. I want my work to be brave enough for your son to be proud of, and for you to recognize when you read it. Lena boarded late, clutching her own letter, her knuckles pale with nerves and hope. She watched the wing cut through a bruise-colored sky and thought of all the ways we are taught to make do, to shrink wanting into polite shapes. She thought of Max's face on the screen when Theo got him laughing so hard his shoulders shook. She landed 3 hours after she planned, past midnight, the city wearing its neon like cheap jewelry. They met at the curb where he had stood 2 weeks earlier, the exact geometry of what they were finally aligning. He was thinner with worry. She wore a courage that suited her. "You left me a whisk," he said, smiling. "You left me a sentence," she replied, and handed him the letter he had not yet read. For a moment, they were 22 again, on bar stools, cheeks aching from not saying what they meant. Then they weren't. Theo stepped forward, all the way through the door they'd never crossed, and kissed her like a promise honored. The kiss was not cinematic in its grandness, but in its rightness. The way it fit into all the previous days like the missing word in a sentence you've read aloud for years. Max, who had persuaded me to let him wait up, pretended to sleep limp down the hall for water. He saw them and rolled his eyes, because children are generous like that when the thing you want for someone you love finally arrives. Chapter 7. The New Map. Months are measured differently once you stop bargaining with your heart. Theo turned down the job that required him to blur himself across time zones. He pitched the portfolio he'd hidden and was told what he already knew, that the best work scares you because it feels like stepping into your whole height. He took clients who wanted to grow brave, not big. He moved his life west in boxes labeled with a tenderness that made me emotional. Coffee ritual, Max's game day signs, Lena's Tuesday apron. Lena signed the lease on a corner space that got improbable afternoon light. She called the bakery the Long Thread, and on opening day, people stood in a line that curved like a hug around the block. Nora flew in and brought a first edition of a forgotten cookbook as a blessing. The menu offered the familiar with a dare, cakes named not after moods but after choices. Say it out loud chocolate, leap of faith lemon, stay over scones. The chili appeared as a weekly special in a bowl simple enough to make you cry. It was not easy. Theo and Max negotiated every inch of new territory like travelers who had learned the word for thank you in each other's languages and were finding the word for please. There were nights when deadlines stacked and someone burned the sauce. There were mornings when the city softened and even the traffic felt like a chorus. There were moments when they fought like people who have to learn new math. Yours plus mine equals ours. From my kitchen table, I watched them choose. It is not a single decision you make once. It is a daily practice. Theo walked Max to school and listened to complaints that were really requests for reassurance. Lena passed the lender another set of tidy numbers and then came home and fell apart on the couch until Theo handed her a cookie and reminded her she was doing something no one else could do. They kissed at red lights and in aisles where the fluorescent lights were unkind. They took the plant that judged you and set it where the morning sun could break it open. People asked how it happened, as if it were sudden. I told them what I saw. 2 people carrying a weather system finally letting it rain. And because I am a woman who believes in documenting the small miracles, I kept the first whisk Lena bought in Brooklyn hanging by my stove, a crooked talisman. When the evening falls and the courtyard lights thread themselves on, I can hear the hum of Theo's laugh, the thud of Max's backpack dropped at the door, and Lena's tired, happy sigh. Somewhere between your place or mine, they built our place.
That's the real story.
The one with 2 keys on 1 ring, a bakery that smells like sugar and courage, and a boy who learned that grown-ups can change the weather too. If you enjoyed this tale, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give a like to the video, leave a comment with your favorite moment, and share the video with someone who believes in second chances.